The Royal St. Lucia Police Force is reinforcing its commitment to tackling domestic violence, recognizing the complexity and emotional nature of these cases. Speaking at a recent police press conference, ACP in charge of corporate services and strategic operations, Dr. Mashama Seeley acknowledged the challenges law enforcement faces in addressing domestic disputes. She emphasized that because emotions run high in such situations, intervention is not always straightforward. However, she reaffirmed the critical role of the RSLPF in ensuring the safety and well-being of victims and their families.
Domestic violence is a very complicated subject because it involves emotions, it involves families, and most times you have incidents where the person who's a victim and may not necessarily be the female alone, it may also be males. We have to acknowledge that. They may not necessarily want to leave the individual immediately because emotions are involved. So that is where counseling is important. That is where a person needs to focus on their safety and themselves. And that is where we come in to provide the necessary guidance to help the individual make the best decision for themselves, their safety, and their families.
Superintendent of Police Luke De Freitas echoed similar sentiments, noting that one of the most effective ways to combat domestic violence is through early intervention and collaboration with community partners. He stressed that while arrests are necessary in many instances, they alone are not sufficient. Addressing the root causes of domestic violence requires a long-term approach that extends beyond punitive measures.
We have always said that one of the areas we think that could curb on these issues of domestic violence, of violence really, is really early intervention. That the police respond quickly, adequately, seriously, identify patterns of abuse, yes, and we deal with them before these domestic issues escalate. We need to also engage our community partners, that we are able to provide protection and shelters for our victims, whether male or female, of violence, domestic or otherwise. So that we need some more long-term solutions just beyond, that go beyond really arrest and maybe protection others. We need things that go more long-term.
De Freitas emphasized the importance of ensuring that both law enforcement officers and the general public have the necessary knowledge to effectively address domestic violence issues. He also highlighted that the Domestic Violence Act grants authority to anyone, whether a victim or not, to report incidents of domestic violence to the police and seek their assistance.
The third point is that we continue to equip our officers and members of the public with the requisite knowledge to identify and report potential domestic violence abuses. The Domestic Violence Act empowers anyone who has information of domestic violence, anyone outside of the situation, empowers them to make reports to the police, and we can act in that regard.
The Royal St. Lucia Police Force remains resolute in its stance that domestic violence in any form will not be tolerated, and every effort will be made to safeguard victims and prevent further harm. For Choice News Now, I am Kishan Smith.